You've survived another week. Thank you for listening, downloading, and supporting the Black Man with a Gun Show. This week, I interview in a conversation with a really good friend of mine. She is the host of Gun Freedom Radio podcast. If you have a social media account and just happen to be involved in a gun community, you've seen her. She has become like the fairy godmother for many, a den mother, a gregarian, effervescent, polka-dotted clad, classy lady, podcaster, and activist. She is, just like you and I, an American gun owner.
BlackManWithAGun.com, Ken Blanchard's Pro-Gun Podcast.
What's up, my friend? You know, I think I'm missing something here. Oh, yeah. To get us started and on one accord, let's do this.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, now we can begin. Hey, if you have been watching the news lately, you may have noticed that a 16-year-old on his birthday pulled out a .45 pistol, shot 2 students, and killed himself. And he wounded 3 others. This was November 14th, unfortunately. And my heart goes out to all the parents of that school in Santa Clarita, California. It's got to be a horrendous feeling getting that call or that text that there is an active shooter threat where your children go to school. You know, sometimes as a pro-gun community, we don't get a chance to be like everybody else. As soon as there is a shooting, we will be demonized, vilified, marginalized, and falsely accused for being American, for being free-thinking, for caring, for believing in self-defense, believing in defense of our families, for being competitors in sports that use firearms, for collecting, for hunting. And we are angry, frustrated about it, tired of getting slammed by the ignorant because we are tired of being demonized, vilified, marginalized, and falsely accused every time someone breaks the law. American gun owners. We are the law-abiding, the voting, the safe and responsible entrepreneurs, good people, folks that you know in your neighborhood, the ones who are members of the PTA, your clubs, your neighborhood. They ask us in every interview, how many guns do you own? Can we see what you have? Can we look at your arsenal? Why do you need so many? Are you doing it to protect yourself from racists? Can we come into your house? And if you're a person of color, they ask you setup questions, inflammatory questions that when you answer them, whatever response you give, they can quote you to make you seem as if you are a paranoid, whatever, fear-mongering, scared of the white man kind of person. It's divisive, and we fall for it anyway, though. So, brothers and sisters, let me remind you that you don't have to say yes to every interview. You don't have to allow them into your home. You definitely don't have to show them your firearms. Show and tell is good for elementary school. After that, nobody needs to know what you own. Don't think that your interview was going to make you rich, make you any money. You'll be famous for all of, that amount of time. And then they will forget all about you. Only you will be sending the links and the pictures around the internet. Nobody else will care anymore. Once you get that, it's easier to say no. No is a powerful word, not used enough. Because your photos and your likeness and your story will be changed around and edited. Or if you were fortunate enough, smart enough to give them only sound bites and lead them in the conversation that would only be a plus for our side, the right side, the free side, they won't print it. They won't air it. They won't show it. Not unless you can be demonized, vilified, marginalized, or falsely accused for being an American gun owner. This portion of the show is brought to you by Black Man with a Gun Reloaded. You can get your autographed copy from me directly by emailing me at blackmanwithagun@gmail.com. For only $20, Black Man with a Gun Reloaded is an autobiographical book about gun control, how I became a trainer, an activist, a speaker for the Second Amendment. This book has a glossary that will make you sharper. It belongs on the bookshelf of every gun owner. Black Man with a Gun Reloaded. Email me at blackmanwithagun@gmail.com today. It's also available on Amazon without the love. Hey, let's talk about women. Oh, I got your attention now, huh? Women in the gun community have come a long way, but are still being exploited for being female. Right or wrong? Do you agree with that? They're still an oddity for the most part, still eye candy. We haven't got to that science fiction Star Trek world yet where women are equal to men and hold the same roles. I believe that's a difference that's by design, and it's a good design. But we sometimes pervert it and make it a bad thing. We don't use the strengths of the women in our lives. We just highlight a few things. Now, a disclaimer. I am a heterosexual male that loves women. I like the gun babes like the rest of folks, but I know that they don't represent all women, nor should they. Sexism and racism are still, pieces of or byproducts of the old boy network power structure, the traditional gun owner. Most of us have cleaned up our acts. We've done better, but there's still a dark side, a underground movement, folks that won't let it go. Won't be right, but you know that too. And now this is not a popular statement. I know this might lose me some listeners, but I like gun bunnies. If you want to be one, then go for it. Be the best gun bunny you can be. But I implore you, I beg of you, do not mix messages. If you're going to have booty shorts on, the Daisy Dukes, and your cleavage hanging out, and they look good on you, don't try to hit me with my brain stuff. Don't try to talk to me intelligently. Don't try to go cerebral. Stay in that zone where you at. I'm just saying. And everybody be cool. Now, I don't know if sex is by itself, but I'm saying if I see more skin than clothes, don't try to hit me with the U.S. Constitution while my mind is racing. It's just not fair. It ain't right. I've had the pleasure over the past 25 years in this activism realm to work under and beside some notable women. And there's so many of them that I'd be missing somebody and I'd feel bad. But I want to highlight two that were the most notable. Tanya Metaxa, who used to be in charge of ILA back in the 90s, and Barbara Baird of Women's Outdoor News. Also, Carol Craighead, the owner of Crossbreed Holsters. Excellent people. Wonderful people. Leaders. And like them, we're going to share a conversation with somebody that I respect by the name of Cheryl Todd. Sit back and relax as we wax poetical. I have on the live line with me the one and only polka dot is her camo, Cheryl Todd from Arizona. Welcome, Miss Todd.
Thank you so much for having me, Ken. This is such an honor and a blessing to be able to sit down and just chat with you for a while. So thank you.
Because you are a go-go person. You make me tired sometimes watching you. I'm thinking, man, her husband must be going, slow down, woman. But he's used to you, so he's pretty good.
Well, we're coming up on we got to do the math, 35th or 36th wedding anniversary in April.
Nice.
And so, yeah, we've kind of fallen into the rhythm of kind of knowing that, you know what, he truly is, I call him the gas pedal of our relationship. He is a go-go dude. And so he definitely gets that. I think he wishes I would slow down a little bit more just so somebody might get some laundry done once in a while. But, we throw in a load here and there and then find it, later in the washing machine. Got to run it again. But
it's all right.
it's all right. It's all right. We're loving the opportunities that this very unique time in our world history has afforded us with, the internet and the social media and the ability to do what we're doing right now.
Mm-hmm.
Right? This didn't take any big fancy equipment on my end. This is the thing I carry around in my pocket all day. This is my cell phone.
That's true.
And we could be doing a video on it if we wanted to.
Mm.
I mean, it's incredible the tools that we have available to us to spread positive messaging, to help counter some of that negative messaging that's constantly out there, and grow relationships across the miles, and travel at ease. It's truly a wonderful time in history, and I'm blessed to be able to be doing what I'm doing right now.
I'm glad you're in the space. You have made a difference in the short time that I've known you. You influencing other people. You're always upbeat, always happy. And I know that takes energy by itself to thwart some of the negative energy that's around. And you've been a positive influence for our side. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you. That's a huge compliment, especially coming from you, who's been doing this for such a long time. And I don't have to tell you this, you hit those valleys where you get tired. You get kind of like, really? A little bit discouraged. Like, is anybody really listening? Or am I just talking into my recorder and, for my own good?
Yeah.
But then it takes something like, just a kind comment on your social media, or somebody messaging you on the side and saying, you know what, I've been thinking about that thing I heard you say the other day, and it's really impacted me. Like, those are those little moments that are like, okay, I'm refueled. All it takes is that,
That's true.
Just a little bit of knowing that it does make a difference, and that it is causing people to shift their paradigms and think a little deeper about the information that's constantly coming at us like a freight train. So
thank you for being you. I mean, everybody doesn't pick it up though. I mean, some people just let it go.
Mm-hmm.
Need more Todds.
Well, I do appreciate that. And my background, my husband and I have been self-employed our whole lives, our whole adult life.
Amazing.
Yeah, I'm telling you. So I was 18 when we got married. He's a touch older. He was 29.
Wow.
So he kind of mentored me into the business world and the business space. And he's just got such a great head on his shoulders about seeing opportunities and knowing how to move towards them. And then I came from this other part of my background that I thought when I grew up, I was going to be a psychologist. And so I spent years studying and getting my degrees slowly, as I've been a wife and a mom and a business owner, and grabbing classes where I can. Finally got my master's degree 2 years ago. And so then what I could bring to the relationship was how to form relationships, how to build culture, all those things that psychology helps us with: communication, interpersonal communication, business to business communication, and really taking his ideas and his dreams and figuring out how do we move them forward. Basically, I move stuff out of the way so while he's on the gas pedal, he's not hitting stuff. So
Nice. Teamwork.
It's so true. And we are such an amazing team. The only time we have a rough go is if we're both trying to stand on the same square at the same time. It's like,
okay, fair.
Like it's a pie chart, right? I do my things, he does his things. They work synergistically, beautifully together. The minute one of our toes goes a little bit over the line, then it's like, I don't think so.
Wow.
But it's really it's been great to be able to do that together. And now our daughter, she's
Mm-hmm.
30. She is the manager of our auction house. That's one of our businesses. So now, when it's good, it's amazing. And when you've got a husband, a wife, and an only child working together under the same roof, and we're all passionate and opinionated, oh boy, it can be
Nice.
interesting. It can be really interesting, but really good. And she was able to. Our daughter Cassie, she was raised up in all this
Entrepreneurism.
Yeah, and being self-employed. And so it's like she's been through the feast and she's been through the famine. And then she's been through the feast again. And so then when you hit famine again, it tends to not shake her up quite so much. She tends to be very level-headed about expenses and budgets and things like that. And I think to segue into the Second Amendment world, I think that's one of the reasons that we need people that have been, you've walked this walk through so many generations. Now, I'm not calling you old. I just mean the generations of, the reason that your brand is called Black Man with a Gun is because that used to be shocking, right?
Right, exactly.
And because of the work you've put in, it's not shocking anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So, those ebbs and flows and mountains and valleys of how culture across the nation shifts and changes. So we need to know the journey that those whose shoulders we stand on, how it went, because then we don't get quite so shook up when things start looking bleak and dire. But then the downside of that is we don't want to be complacent and go, well, we survived the civil rights riots of the 60s. And so now this Antifa thing, no big deal. Yeah, it's still kind of a big deal. We still got to be involved. Nobody's ever going to take our rights, our guns away because they've threatened it before. We need to, we can't sit back on our laurels and think that. So I think we have to have that balance of forward-thinking, passionate patriotism that is tied to the past and also understands not to completely freak out just because the news is constantly trying to make us freak out.
The eternal vigilance piece.
Yeah, no doubt.
What started you on this track? I mean, how'd you get from entrepreneur to Second Amendment activist?
Well, I think that it really comes from, I'm just kind of a natural teacher. Like my poor daughter, everything was always a teachable moment. So, wouldn't matter what we were doing, where we were, I would find some way to make it a teachable moment. And it's just kind of the way my brain works.
Nice.
And so thank you. And so when our previous president was first elected, Barack Obama, right at that moment, we were only, as our gun store, Easy Firearms, we were only 2 years old at the time. And so we had, 2 years of toddling along and trying to figure out, are we just a corner mom and pop shop, or are we going to stretch and grow and become, kind of a nationwide brand? And let's look at the tools available to us, blah, blah, blah. But we just, it was just a business. We were just selling a product like we had done in any of our other businesses. Then when President Obama came into office, almost immediately, the national conversation about firearms changed. And it seemed like every night on the news, there was some negative slant, some negative phrasing, something that was vilifying not only the inventory in our store, the items we sold, the tools themselves, the guns, but also the people who would come in and buy those, right? So now they're vilifying my customer and then don't even start to think about how awful the purveyor of deaths that we were, my husband and I, as the gun store owners, right? We're selling these things.
Right.
And so I started seeing that it was shifting and changing how people at church. I was on the worship team at church for several years. The moms and dads that I would interact with at my daughter's school and, places like that, it just changed the way that they would interact with me and the questions that might come my way. There was less of a, hey, well, what do you do for a living? And then I'd say, well, we have an auction house and we have a gun store. And then they say, oh, well, that's cool. Well, tell me about, whatever was more interesting to them. Mm-hmm. Then it was almost like you could see them sort of recoil or stiffen when I got to the gun store part.
Right.
And so I realized, all right, they're buying into the lies. And how do I make these teachable moments without being that person that is, talking at people, or they can't just have a casual conversation with, because now it's got to get all weird because we're going to talk about the gun thing.
Even in Arizona?
Yes, even in Arizona. Because it was such a drastic change, I think is why. And there was such a huge onslaught of information. And Sandy Hook was in there, and there were other things also that made people think differently about the gun itself. So I just realized that there was a need for truth out there. And so I would just try to speak it as well as I could. And that made me realize I am not as knowledgeable as I need to be. So it made me start picking up books and reading my Constitution and looking at history and, on, so that I could be better spoken, a better ambassador for what I do for a living. And so flash forward, a friend of ours had a radio show about the outdoors. And here in Arizona, the common denominator of whether you are fishing or hunting or hiking or four-wheeling or horseback riding, the common denominator is we realize that we have four-legged predators.
Yes.
We have no-legged predators, snakes. And, that there are two-legged predators out there. Absolutely. when we're out there in the outdoors. And, some of those scary campfire stories are for real. I'm telling you. So he wanted to have my husband Dan on. His name was Mike Russell. It was called Get Outdoors with Mike Russell. Wanted to have Dan on to talk about the tools himself because Mike wasn't that well versed in it. Well, as the show went on, because not to be sexist, but these two dudes did not do any planning. They thought we're going to show up in the studio and we're just going to turn on the microphones and talk. And I'm like, okay, I can't function that way. So
right.
I would be, planning and finding articles and so on and so forth. So when we got into the studio, it just kind of became less about the tools and more about the topics. And I realized there was such a hunger out there for the information. So Dan and I thought, well, great. This will be kind of like us practicing and maybe auditioning for our own show on this station. And then one weekend we were having a conversation with the station manager at an event and said something to that effect to him. And he goes, no. Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow.
And we were like, wait, what? And he said, yeah, we're not. And matter of fact, I'm not real thrilled that you guys are talking about guns in this 15-minute segment on Saturdays. And so we said, okay, if we have no history here, no future here, then we're gonna move along. Mm-hmm. And he said, actually, I'm glad to hear you say that. And I wanted to get you out of your contract anyway, of advertising that way on our friend's show. So it was an amicable split, but boy, I was, you say I'm upbeat and happy and stuff all the time. That weekend, I was
not so
lit
much
up. I was lit up. I was so frustrated and furious that, it was not wasted time, but in some ways I felt like, well, we could have been wasting time here. And if we hadn't had that odd conversation. And so anyway, I did some quick research, and basically in the course of a few days, we ended up with an hour-long show on a station here. It's an AM station in Phoenix called The Patriot. And I thought, how perfect
right?
is that? The Patriot and Gun Freedom Radio. It was like meant to be.
Mhm.
So we did that for a couple years or so. And well, actually, we were only an hour-long show for a very short period of time before Mr. Gas Pedal, my husband Dan, said, you know what, we really need to do 2 hours.
Wow.
I said, you know what, that's pretty awesome, except that I do all the work for this show, and now it's doubling my
Doubled.
work.
Yeah.
But it made sense, really, because there's so many people that we wanted to, and that's getting back to your, how did I get into this? I wanted to be a resource,
Mhm.
but I didn't want to be the resource. I wanted to connect people to experts in their field, right? Because I can be a jack of many trades, but I want to talk to the master. And so I wanted to be that platform where I could elevate the voices and give the microphone to people that, you know, that's what they do all day, every day, is this one little piece, whether it's hunting, whether it's gunsmithing, whether it's the political piece, you know, whatever it is. And so in an hour's time, I mean, you blink and it's done. So having the 2 hours allowed us to not only bring more voices to our show, but it allowed us to have a segment called the Responsibly Armed Citizen Report, which countered a lot of that rhetoric that there's no such thing as a good guy with a gun stopping a bad guy with, like, people literally say that. I'm sure you've heard it. I'm
Yeah.
assuming your listeners have probably heard it, but there are people out there that they're like, who could ever say that with a straight face? And there's other people that are like, yeah, I heard that because it's the truth. It's like,
Yeah,
no,
right.
it's not the truth. So we would bring these stories that have happened that, you know, and just right this week, yesterday, day before, a lady who's 8 months pregnant used an AR-15. Oh my goodness, gasp, grab your pearls. It was an AR-15, right? And she was able to stop 2 men who had busted down her door and were pistol whipping her husband and trying to physically grab, and I don't know what they were planning to do with their 11-year-old daughter.
Wow.
But those are the things that we would bring to our Responsibly Armed Citizen Report.
Mm.
And so anyway, it was basically because I realized that there was not only rampant ignorance out there about our Second Amendment, rampant, and some of it is willful ignorance, and that's the stuff that just sends me, you know.
Same.
And so there was that, so it left a gaping hole, and then realizing that there are people that are famished for the actual truth.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wanted to give those people something with no agenda. I mean, of course, I'm a gun store owner, so if there's any agenda, I mean, if somebody could say that that's an agenda, that's the only one. At my little corner store, I'm trying to protect, you know, but there's no agenda here. Just meeting with amazing people like yourself, which, by the way, you will always be my hero, because you were my very first guest ever when I was at the Patriot on my very first freestanding show.
That is one of the best honors ever to be there, because I look back at you now and go, man, 100 years from now, they're going to be like, who was that dude? But they will remember.
Well, I doubt that would be the case, but it's I just really appreciated that so much, because I thought, you know, you are Ken Blanchard. You're the black man with the gun. You've done so much. You are the shoulders on which so many of us stand. And I just took that chance to reach out and say, hey, would you be on my brand new show with no history? You know, and you just immediately said yes. And I was floored, and that gave me so much confidence to move forward and to reach out to other people. And so I will always appreciate that. You gave me that opportunity.
Oh, you're most welcome. And then we flash forward to just recently, November 2nd, 2019. you got a chance. You were a really big part of the Second Amendment rally here at the nation's capital. How'd that all turn out for you?
It was awesome. I mean, beyond awesome. And it's not about crowd size, which I thought was a very good crowd. I think they were estimating somewhere 2,000. Someone even went as high as 3,000, but I'm not very good at estimating crowds, but the 2,000 feels right. The weather couldn't have been more perfect. There was no negativity in the air. We didn't end up with the protesters. I had spoken on the Supreme Court steps for the Heller 10 celebration a couple years back, and there were protesters screaming and yelling there, and it was an exhausting and a little bit intimidating experience. So I didn't know what to expect with this, but there was none of that. And the people that they had assembled, the organizers had assembled, the variety of speakers from the different lanes within the lane. So we were all in the lane of the Second Amendment, but some of us have distinct lanes within that space, was very rich, very diverse. And I couldn't even listen to all of the speeches that day because I'm networking, I'm talking, I'm visiting, I'm doing interviews. And yeah, and so I've been listening. It's a 3-hour rally. So I've been listening like as I drive to the grocery store and whatever. Really good content. It wasn't just rah after rah. It was truly, we were giving information to our audience, not just the people physically there, but all the hundreds of thousands of people who have been watching the Facebook Lives, the Instagram Lives, the freestanding videos that other people posted up. It was just incredible. I'm so proud and so blessed to have been able to be there. And of course, you were one of the speakers. So that just, I get to share the stage with my very first ever guest and the one and only Ken Blanchard. Yeah, I'm there every time.
Yeah, but you had your own fan thing going too. It was huge. And that was cool to watch as well. But you've been doing that for years now. I watch you take over the place when you come into the area. It's a good thing. Thank
you. It's fun. I like to say that I'm kind of shy. You gotta kind of help me work up my courage, but we all know that's a lie. So
yeah, somebody's light is not even close to being under a bucket. It is shining like nobody's business. And I really appreciate it because every community has its people. You have like your tricksters, your pranksters. You have your older folks that are kind of keep things in order. You have your senior statesmen. You might have the grandfather or the good uncle, and you've definitely become like the den mother that people trust with the little things. I mean, they might even ask you, where can I go and have my kids wait right here? I mean, like everything. They're gonna just hang stuff on you because you're the mama. And I get it on the other side. I'm the funny uncle that they tell all the secret serious stuff to. Like I can't tell jokes or anything, but that's a whole other story. I get all the solemn stuff, all the sad news. So, but it's all right. I'm gonna change that.
No, and what an honor that is. That so Yehuda Reamer calls himself the Pew Pew Jew. Right. He writes a ton of books and that sort of thing. Like I had barely met him, and he started referring to me as his 2A mom.
See,
I could not have been more proud.
Yep.
I mean, I just thought, oh my goodness, I love that he feels that way, because there is that saying, people will forget the actual thing you said, but they'll never forget how you made them feel.
Yes.
And that is powerful, that people feel that, what I do and what I say has merit and is trustworthy. And I do not take that lightly. I value that like the precious gem that it is. And I I just love people. I love to learn people's stories. That is, I mean, I would love to have all the conversations I've ever had on my show anyway, but the fact that we can have it on a microphone and share it with the masses just makes it all that much better. But I found that I've become a huge resource for people that are like, hey, Cheryl, I'm trying to connect with so-and-so to do this other thing. Do you know? And I'm like, yeah, I absolutely do know that person. And that is one of my favorite things ever, when I get to make a connection and then stand back and watch how that relationship blossoms and the work that they get to do together. And I just think it's phenomenal. I just pinch myself sometimes that God has allowed me to work in that way.
That's a good thing right there. What do you think is new? What's next for us as the 2A rally crowd? The next year, the next couple of months, we got SHOT Show after the holidays, and there's a couple of other 2A events. What do you think is going to be a big thing for our community?
Well, it's the election year. Like, I want to say it's an election year, but just like
true.
The last election, it's another important one. I don't feel as uncertain about the outcome this time as I did the last one. But it's going to be a big year. The Democratic Party has made the Second Amendment a major political. It should not be a political issue. The Constitution was written for everyone, but now that piece of the Bill of Rights, the Second Amendment,
so true,
has become this political football. So we have to answer that call. We have to be ready to understand that we are going to probably have, I'm hoping, another rally like this before the election. We have to understand the work that we're going to do as we connect with people at the SHOT Show. So the SHOT Show, for the people that don't know, that's an industry event where all the manufacturers come together, and then people like me that own gun stores, we show up and we do shopping there, and we make our orders for the year and that sort of thing. And that's my husband's piece of the pie. That's what he goes and does. But now that we've got Gun Freedom Radio, I go and connect with people, and I get interviews, and we discuss ideas and lay the groundwork for giving people that counter argument, giving people the counter ideas to the people with the huge megaphones on the Democratic presidential hopeful stages. The stuff they say, sometimes we don't know how to reply. We don't know, how to have an opinion, hold to the opinion, state the opinion without it devolving into a yelling match or an argument or whatever. And so I spend those times, and people like yourself and the people that were at the rally. There's a big one coming up. It's called Gunathon for Gun Owners of America. That's coming up in April. There's a few others. We spend that time encouraging one another, sharing ideas, formulating phraseology, message building, all of that stuff. And so I think that there's going to be more opportunities through the next 12 months until we get to the election day. Is that going to be a year from right now?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, wow. That's
Isn't
crazy.
that something?
That is. So I think that it's going to be a very vibrant and vigorous year, and that we're not going to get to take any naps. We're going to have to be on it. We're going to have to be ready for more of those mass murders that just seem to magically crop up out of nowhere. Not that I'm a conspiracy theorist, mind you, but I'm just saying.
They conveniently come out.
Yeah.
Certain times.
Somebody sometime is going to step back and take the 3,000-foot view and map it on a timeline and tie it to the rest of what's going on in the world and go, oh, that's interesting. What do those stars tell us?
Scary.
But what's that?
That's scary.
Yeah. So, but for the reality of, people are going to do bad things. And so good people have to be ready before they happen, while they're happening, and after they happen. And I think that's what we're going to be spending our time doing.
Cool. Tell me about the pot of luck, pot of gold auctions.
Pot of Gold. So that's potofgoldestate.com is the website. So that started the same time, roughly, as AZ Firearms, the gun shop. But it was an estate sale business my husband and I created. So an estate sale is basically a yard sale indoors. So somebody passes away or somebody's getting ready to move or whatever, and they've just got stuff that they need to sell. So we would go in and hold these estate sales. And we chose that name because we're standing between the seller that feels that they have amazing and valuable items and the buyer who wants to buy everything at a bargain. And we've got to balance those two things. So our advertising couldn't be, hey, come to the bargain bin estate sale, because then the owner is looking at us like, well, wait a minute, I want to make some money off of this stuff. I don't want to just give it away. And then we also can't say, come to this super high end, estate thing, because then the buyers might feel like, well, if I can't get a good deal, I'm not going to show up. So it's a pot of gold. Everybody's happy, right?
Yeah, that's good stuff.
Thank you. So started out as an estate company, realized after a few years that, we can only serve, estate sales can only happen for maybe 2 or 3 days, like a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, maybe a Sunday. People can only drive from such a radius before they say, no, that's too far to drive to go see if everything's already sold before I even get there. Yeah. So we realized that auction was the better vehicle to sell things. The other thing is that with an estate sale, it was fully on me. And this is before, I'm dating myself, this is before we had Google. The internet was pretty brand new.
Yeah.
So everything, every item, I'd have this vase, right? I would have to figure out, all right, who made it? How old is it? Is it genuinely old, or is it a reproduction? And what price should I put on it? Mm-hmm. Well, I would have to go, research in other antique stores and stuff, and go to the library and hope I could find some book somewhere on some vase that was maybe also made in Germany in the 1920s, Okay. But I would have to set the price. And so I'd say, all right, it's a $200 vase. And then everybody that would come in would want to bargain that price down. With the auction, I have to know what it is because I have to describe it. My staff does that now. I don't do that anymore, but my staff does that now. They have to describe it well. We have to take great pictures of it. But then the bidders decide how much it's worth. They do the research on the value, because Joe isn't going to let Sam steal it. And so there's that competition where it drives the price up, versus when it's a estate sale, everybody wants to bargain the price down. So that's where that came from. And we opened that 13 years ago, opened it in the gun store at the same time in the same building. And we just in the last couple of months bought a new building to move the auction into. And so we're fully moved and fully functioning. We had our ribbon cutting and all of that a couple of weeks ago. And we love our new space. And then the old space, the gun store is going to move into. And so it's going to be expanding. And we're hoping that maybe by Black Friday we'll have our soft opening, but we're not sure, because everything takes much longer than you think it's going to. And then everything's more expensive. Just when we put the places together,
Mm-hmm.
we had our budget, and we're like, okay, so a 2x4 costs this, and a thing of sheetrock costs that, and so on and so forth. And then something happened. I can't remember historically. Something happened at that time. I think it might have been the housing boom here in Arizona. Prices were going through the roof. Yeah, because like 2 years later was when everything crashed. So then that 2x4 and that sheetrock suddenly was 3 times more than what your budget said it was going to be. And
Wow.
now we're doing this project, and we have all the tariffs and stuff going on.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're in the exact same. It's like, what are you doing, guys? Like, what kind of little funny joke is this that you keep having us doing construction projects when, the prices go crazy? But my husband, again, he's so talented at all the different things that he does. And so he's great. He can do plumbing.
Danny.
Right. He can do electrical. He can build walls. He's just, so that's helped us keep things economical.
That's really cool. How can folks find you on the internet? How can they find out about your podcast and about all that you do?
Well, thank you for asking that. So we have the various entities. So there's azfirearms.com. Facebook. There's potofgoldestate.com. Again, Twitter, Facebook.
I like how that sounds.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And then, of course, gunfreedomradio.com. And thank you. And so, again, I stay pretty active on all of those accounts. And we just try to share not just, information stuff, but as far as like, here's what we have for you to spend money on. But we try to also use all of our platforms the way that we use our radio show, which is to engage, educate, and inform. So please check us out.
All right. Thank you, Cheryl, for taking the time out. And
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you. I appreciate all that you do, and I am blessed to know you.
Now that was an American gun owner. And I know I have a whole bunch more I want to share before I pull the plug on this podcast. So if you think you'd be a good person to interview, hit me up. I will share the microphone. I'll make some time and we'll do a little interview to get the word out. I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to do this, actually. The blog will stay the same. I'm just going to fix it up. I'm going to actually work on the blog, pull some podcast episodes, do some better writing on the blog, put some show notes to stuff that hasn't been there. Try to pretty it up a little bit so that the message can still be out. So the podcast will end, I'm hoping, that's the plan, and the end of 2019. But the blog will continue, be on its 20th year. I actually started blackmailthegun.com in 1999, and it's gone through a whole bunch of iterations, but I'm going to do it up. And maybe, just maybe, this show will come back. But I have my creative juices are flowing, and there's some things I want to do with video, with podcasting still, and I need to make room. You have to keep growing. That's the secret of life. One of my test tube babies is a podcast called The Ken Blanchard Show, and you can find out about that one at kenspodcast.com. And I'm running pretty risque over there. I'm doing whatever. So if you want to hear about D.C., Maryland, Virginia area, and all kind of things running through my mind, the world according to Ken, the stuff that's in my brain, some of the stuff might make you upset. Check out kenspodcast.com when you get a chance. And let me know what you think about my test tube, baby.
Is the cost of ammo bringing you down? Are you ready to have fun with your firearm again? If you need ammo, your friend and brother from a different mother has the answer. LuckyGunner.com. Good prices. LuckyGunner.com. If your time is valuable, LuckyGunner.com. Order your ammo today. LuckyGunner.com. Where you won't waste your time and the shipping is fast. It's 110% guaranteed. LuckyGunner.com.
And if you'll do me a solid and go to blackmanwithagun.com, you will see a link to the photo of a young lady for LuckyGunner.com. I can get credit for it if you go there. BlackmanWithAGun.com. Look for that link on the sidebar. Thanks. And speaking of credit, for all my friends that are supporting this podcast and have been supporting it, bless you. Thank you. Merci beaucoup. Dankeschön. Shukran. And every word of thanks I can think of. You've kept me going. You've motivated me. You've helped me pay the bills. I'm only going to ask you to do it just for a little bit longer. And if you want something totally different that you probably haven't purchased yet, check out my American Gun Owner shirt and logo stuff. The link will be in their show notes. In case you're new, for the past 25 years, I've been blazing the path for gun rights in non-traditional communities. In the beginning, I worked and learned from the National Rifle Association, Second Amendment Foundation, no longer the Law Enforcement Alliance of America, Gun Owners of America, even worked for 2AO for a hot second. I supported and was the first to do many grassroots initiatives. Before social media, I spoke, taught, debated, lobbied for the right to keep and bear arms. The website, as I said before, has been around since 1999. As an author, a keynote speaker, and an activist, I've been there and done that. And in case you didn't know it, the gun rights struggle is evergreen, which means it's always been around. As long as there's been gunpowder, there's been people trying to take away the right of who owns it, who has it, and who can use it. And there's always been a fight for common sense. Only the law-abiding get abused. If I can leave you with a few takeaways. Remember that social media has its trolls. But the real work for my activists out there is about changing the hearts and minds of our people in our community, people in our reach, the people under our influence. Nothing beats a face-to-face. Black Man with a Gun was created to desensitize folks to the whole stigma of being a person of color and armed. Anybody that wasn't into the cowboy culture, country music, NASCAR scene, or a traditional hunter was my target audience. So I helped create the Latin American Gun Owners Group, the 10th Cavalry Gun Club. I work with a few women's groups that are no longer around, but I did help them. I even worked with the Pink Pistols when they first started here on the East Coast. I work with the Urban Affairs Committee, which no longer exists under the NRA. I actually testified in state houses of Texas, Virginia, Michigan, Wisconsin, Virginia, and Maryland. I'm proud of the work we did to help repeal concealed carry reforms. I mean, before, if you look like me, you weren't getting a concealed carry permit. We broke all those things down. I say we because it wasn't just me. It was a whole bunch of people. And I had to learn to get out of my own way. I had to learn to be a team player. I learned that grassroots doesn't make you any money. That this is more of a nonprofit thing. Hint, hint. If you're trying to survive your tenure as an activist. And if it wasn't for people like you, I never would have made it this far. Grazie. Gracias. Salamat po. Domo origato. Shishini. Kamsahamnida. And to you and you and you, thanks. You know, being this person that I have become, the pastor of pistoleros, paladins, and patriots, being the chaplain, the Friar Tuck of this band of misfits that believes in the right to keep and bear arms, that believes in the U.S. Constitution, that believes in freedom. I'm not ashamed to say that I love you. And ain't a damn thing you can do about it. Until next time. Shalom, baby.
Until next time, friends.
To keep in touch with Ken and his cause, head over to blackmanwithagun.com.